Hello everyone, this is Casey with CyberKazoo, and today we are going over data-driven decisions. This is one of my personal favorite topics as I really love delving into what makes things work, what makes them successful, how to measure that over time, and how to improve your processes. So if you'll bear with me over the next 30 minutes or so, the goal is to show you how that data can be used to accelerate your business. Some of you, just upon hearing the term data, may be closing your eyes and feeling a little bit sleepy already. You may feel that numbers are just something in the universe conspiring against you to make life less interesting. Well, I'm here to tell you that paying a little bit of attention to those numbers and to that data can take a little bit of the frustration and guesswork out of your business and help you sleep a little easier. For some of you, data may not be boring, but it may be overwhelming, or it may seem needlessly complicated. In that case, I would say that taking the time to understand your data is an investment in knowing what is working and what is not, and knowing where you stand, how far you've come, and the direction in which you're headed are all worth toasting to. So hopefully this has piqued your interest a little bit, and set a good foundation for why data is important and how it's going to benefit you in the long run. So that brings us to our first major question. Where is your data? Assuming you are a longtime Point 2 customer and you haven't done anything special to your website, you probably have some default data stored right in Point 2 in your online office. And this is something we can actually help you dig up and help you interpret and help you apply to your business strategy. For those of you with a bit more advanced understanding, you may have already made an investment in Google Analytics, which is a much more modern and robust tool that provides a lot more data points. We are going to take the time to go over both of these today and some of the benefits offered by each service. I don't want you to necessarily see these two as competing services, as in you can only have one or the other, or one is better than the other. Really, it comes down to both of these are a way of tracking your data and using it to your advantage. And in either case, having data is better than not having data. So now we're going to jump right in and go ahead and ask one of the major questions. Why does data matter? And this is a question that I'd like to look really closely at because data is going to matter for all of us in different ways. And as we look at this question, feel free to look past the official responses that I provide and feel free to come up with your own concepts and ideas as to, why data matters to your business and how it can increase your success over time. The first major answer that I came up with for why data matters is that informed decisions produce better results. How many of you truly believe that making an informed decision is better than randomness or guesswork? Hopefully that's all of you, or at least most of you, because that is how we progress as a species. As humankind, we experiment, we have a lot of trial and error, and hopefully we learn from our mistakes. And because we learn from our mistakes, we're able to do better than we did before. Sometimes this comes down to timing, but sometimes it just comes down to effort, making an investment in truly harnessing what you have, truly harnessing the data, truly harnessing the information that your website is producing on a regular basis and using that to your advantage. The next idea that I came up with is it's an opportunity to improve weak areas. So data is really good because it's going to show you what's working, but it's also going to show you what's not working. Perhaps some pages on your site are underperforming, or perhaps a strategy that you tried 10 years ago is no longer working. And being able to see that over time, being able to see it compared to other pages on your site, to other sites in general, that's really going to help you figure out, what needs to be done to truly make it work the way you want it to. And lastly, your site is an investment. It is essentially your online office space. So you really do want to take the time to measure the results and learn from each investment. If you're going to be making these investments, you do want to make sure they're actually paying off for you. Now that we have covered the where and the why, I'd like to jump right into the what. So we're going to look at some of the point 2 data and metrics available in your online office. So this is one of the tools that's available to you that allows you to compare your site to other point 2 sites around the world. Now, when you're looking at it on a small scale like this, it's not always going to go up every single week. I'm sure you know this about your own market. There's a busy season and there's a slow season. So don't be discouraged if in a slow season you have less traffic than you did in a busy season. The more important thing is to measure these stats from year to year, just to kind of see that they are accumulating over time. So in this case, you can actually see how many unique visitors come to visit your site each week. You can compare it to the week before. You can see how many page views. So on average, if 1,000 people came to the site last week, they visited just over 4 pages each, which is very good. That means they're not just showing up on the home page and leaving. It means they're really interested, they're engaged, and they're clicking around to see what's available. And of course, that's an improvement as well. Listing views for your listings. This is of all of the listings that belong to you, how many people are actually clicking on the individual listings and looking at those specific listings. And then of course, other listings, which include your handshakes. So as you can see in this case, there's a huge benefit to having handshake listings. He's actually had over double the views on handshake listings that he did on personal listings. But shared commission is better than no commission at all. So this is really good to know. And of course, how many new prospects have come out of that time period. And in this case, this is how many people have actually signed up on the contact form, provided names, email addresses, callback numbers, and basically said that they want to be engaged. They're ready to move forward in discussing or viewing a home. You can also compare yourself to the top 10 sites, top 100 sites, and top 1,000 sites within the Point 2 platform. This is more useful in your specific market than it is against all Point 2 sites, just because markets can be very different. One market can be just a lot busier naturally due to the amount of homes and the overall population available. So just keep that in mind and don't judge yourself too harshly if you're not in the top 10 or even the top 100. It's more important just how you compare to the other realtors in your area. The next thing I want to talk about is the featured listing ads that are available within Point 2. So just so you know, these are free with Pro and Elite accounts. With a Pro account, I believe you get 3, and with an Elite account, I believe you get 20. Now, this isn't going to be relevant in every single market. It's going to be relevant in any market where Point 2 homes is one of the top results when you type in your area real estate. So if that is the case in your market, and you can do this, you can test this by bringing up an anonymous browser and doing your area real estate and seeing if Point 2 homes is one of the top results. If it is, and your site isn't, this is a great way to drive extra traffic to your leads, to your listings, and possibly even to your website. So I highly recommend making this work for you. I pulled up one of these from one of our clients who in Puerto Vallarta, who's very successful with this. And basically by using these, this is all traffic that is generated from the main Point 2 Homes site. So because of Point 2 Homes, he's gotten 31,000 views on one of his listings, 139 clicks on one of them. And if you look at some of these others, you can see some other interesting things suggested by the numbers. This bottom one, even though it only has 13,000 views compared to 31,000 views, has 343 views, which is over double what this first one has. So what that to me is going to suggest is that the third one is perhaps more appealing. Maybe it's the way that it's priced. Maybe it's the way that the pictures are presented. So just keep that in mind when putting these kinds of things out there. Make little observations about what's making things more successful than other things on your site. And usually it does come down to a lot of the same basic stuff. It comes down to this is a more popular price range, this is a more appealing picture, this is a better angle, does it involve good day shots, or are they all kind of dark and grainy photos taken with your cell phone? Just take the time to make sure you're making these observations and doing it right. And as I was saying, that provides insight as to what types of listings are more effective here. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to put the $1 million home on the featured listing ads. Just because less people can truly afford that doesn't mean that you don't want to put it out there for the people that can. So making those observations shouldn't necessarily always determine your strategy, but it should be factored in there. And of course, for those of you who understand SEO, referrals from other sites, especially successful sites like Point2 Homes, are very important in boosting your overall online credibility. Spinning off of the featured listing ads is the featured agent ads. And in this case, instead of focusing on specific listings or homes that people might be interested in, you sell yourself. Just like featured listings, you do get a free one with a pro account, and I believe you get 3, possibly 5 free ones with an elite account. So the goal here is just to make sure you've got a good picture of yourself, because some people, they don't necessarily know what they're looking for yet, but they really just want to make sure they're working with the right person. So if they end up on Point2 Homes and they see, a smiling, trustworthy face, they might be likely just to contact you directly and say, I'm going to trust this guy or this lady to help me find what I'm looking for. And again, you can see the information here. You can actually see how many views his profile has gotten for each of the specific areas where he's featured himself as an agent, and you can see how many clicks that's turned into. What is most interesting here to me isn't the overall numbers of views or clicks, it's just that these are all clicks and views that would not have occurred at all if he were not taking advantage of this feature. So in the end, it always comes down to it's better to have it than not have it. One other piece of useful information in the Point2 online office is information about your handshakes. Now you may wonder, are handshakes actually benefiting you? Are they really amounting to more business or not? And in this case, you can actually look at and see numbers directly pertaining to how your handshakes are working in your favor. So in this case, you can see how many people, how many other agents you're actually cooperating with, how many handshakes complete. You can see how many times your listings are viewed on other websites. And you can also see how having other people's handshakes on your website is actually generating more interest and more traffic on your website. So again, what this comes down to is this number is all exposure that you would not have if you were on another site. And this represents listings that people would not have seen if you hadn't handshaked with other agents. So that really does amount to more time spent on your site and more time seeing your listings on other sites if you take the time to be friendly and play well with others. The main concept here that I want you to take away is that handshakes are essentially free exposure. People would not be seeing the listings on other sites if you were not handshaked with other agents. And people would spend less time on your site, less time scrolling, less time clicking, less interaction if you did not have their listings on yours. So it is mutually beneficial between you and any other agents that you trust and you're willing to work with to take the time and handshake and have a friendly relationship. Just to piggyback on handshakes a little bit, it is important to check your handshake agreements to make sure that there aren't any sitting in limbo. A lot of you may have several pending approval, or you may be stuck in pending approval status with several people who you've sent handshake requests to. So this is a good time to just check and make sure that everyone you want to work with, you are working with, and anyone that you might be stuck in limbo with, maybe just send them a message and have them check their handshakes and go ahead and approve you. And in that case, our friend here has 7 pending approval, so we can suggest that he goes ahead and emails them to make sure that's going to work. People that you don't trust, you can actually block. You can just say, I've had a bad experience with this agent. I don't trust them. They didn't keep their word. They didn't treat my client correctly. Feel free to do that. And, in some case, they might not like you either. But that's okay. What really matters is that you're working well with as many people as you can. Now, before I go on too much farther, I want us to just stop and take a step back and take a nice deep breath, because some of you may be drowning in the data at this point. You may be at that point where you're falling asleep or reaching for that drink, and I encourage you not to. Just bear with me for a little bit longer because you're not alone. This isn't just you against the numbers. This isn't just you against the data. We actually offer a lot of services in this department to help you interpret the data, to help you understand it, and to just minimize your exposure to it. If you don't like seeing it, if you just want to like have the conclusion, if you just want the summary version, we can do that for you. We actually offer a website checkup service where we'll take a look at everything you have available on your back end, and we can make a lot of very specific suggestions as to how to improve your results. If you aren't tracking the results correctly, we can also set up some more tools on your back end so you can track more data points and have more information available to you next time you decide to make a change. So don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like it's you against the world here. We are on your side. So jumping back into things, we just want to know, how much traffic are you actually generating? Do you know? If not, would you like to know? How is your site comparing to other Point 2 sites? How is it comparing to other sites in your area? Do you think this information is important to you? Are you using all of the tools at your disposal or just some of them? Are these tools benefiting you, or are they just kind of sitting there gathering dust? And lastly, are you playing well with others? Those alliances can really take you far, and we want to make sure that you're truly taking advantage of that, because other people in a good network are one of your greatest assets. Now, for those of you who are more tech savvy or more data oriented, you may have come to a similar conclusion that I came to, that Point 2 doesn't always provide enough data. Is there another option? Or in some cases, maybe you don't have Point 2 at all. Maybe you're just a general realtor using a WordPress platform or another competitor's platform, and you want to know if there is something else available. And the answer in both cases is yes, and the answer is Google Analytics. I'm sure all of you have heard of Google and possibly even of their analytics services. Google's not only a major search engine, but they run a lot of the algorithms and collect a lot of the data that makes the web work like it does today. They are the largest search engine platform, and as such, they have a lot of influence over the standards of how sites are built, what determines a good site from a bad site. So we use a lot of their insights to help improve the sites so that they are more Google friendly and more search engine friendly in general. Google is one of the most established and reliable names on the web. They have a reputation that spans a couple of decades at this point, and they really haven't faltered from that #1 position. And lastly, they are the industry standard, more so than Bing, more so than Yahoo, more so than any other search engine. They determine what is considered good and what is not. So if you are interested in data at all, I do recommend considering Google Analytics and considering installing this little bit of code on the back end of all of your pages to make sure that we can track them and we can actually see how they're performing over time. As an example of what Google actually offers you, I've brought up a graph here, and this actually allows you to see the difference between perhaps a slow season and a busy season. For whatever reason, in this particular market, there was just very little traffic at the end of the year. And then, as more people become interested in this topic, it starts to spike up again. Now, you may actually see these kinds of trends in your site from year to year, which is really useful, because that way it's not just you, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, it's just that this is the pattern of the market. Now, even so, you can still improve the result from year to year. There are ways to get more traffic during downtime, and of course ways to get even more traffic during high season. So we want to make sure we're factoring in all of that information each cycle. One of the main things I'd like to draw attention to is the new visitor versus return visitor ratio here. This is going to be really important. It is important that not only that you are drawing traffic initially to your site, but that a certain amount of those people are actually coming back later. What this says to Google and to other search engines is that your site is a good site. If people just show up once and they leave and they never come back, that essentially sends the wrong message. It says that they did not have whatever I happened to be looking for. So if you do have a healthy percentage of people returning, and that can be anywhere from 20 to 40%, then your site is doing well. And Google is going to actually give you a few more points for return visitors than it is for new visitors. Another couple of good things to look at is how many sessions you have, how many users you have, how many overall page views are coming up. In this case, this site is getting an average of 9 page views per session. That is huge. That means people aren't just like showing up at the home page and leaving, or clicking through a couple of pages and leaving. People are checking out lots of different things on this site, and that is way better than them just showing up, checking out a page or two, and leaving. The bounce rate is also nice and low. The bounce rate in general, you want it to be a little less than 40% if possible. That's probably about a max of what you'd expect. 30% is much more healthy. Anything under 20% is pretty much unheard of. So between 20 and 30% is pretty much a sweet spot. Up to 40% is still acceptable. One other piece of information that's really great is this average session duration. You can actually see how long people are spending on your site. So if they show up and they leave within 30 seconds, that's how this bounce rate is calculated. So in this case, they're staying for 5 minutes and 54 seconds each. That's how they're actually getting to those 9 pages, and they're checking a lot of different things out. This is all really useful information because it means that this page has really engaging content. Perhaps it's videos that people are watching, or pictures that people are looking at, or just the great listings that they happen to be scrolling through. In any case, these are the kind of statistics that you want to see. So Google also will allow you to see which devices people are using to access your site. In this case, it's broken up into desktop, mobile, and tablets. And of course, desktop includes laptop computers as well. But what's really important to see here is that more and more people are going to be accessing your site from a mobile and tablet environment. According to some recent statistics I looked at, it's about 50-50 in terms of people who access the sites from desktops versus phones or tablets. So what you can see here is, although the overall number of desktop views is a bit higher, the percentage of new views for mobile and tablet are both higher in this case. So mobile and tablet are growing faster than desktop views. And that means that eventually these numbers, although smaller now, will catch up to desktop. So it is important. What this tells you is that you want to make sure your site is mobile friendly. It is tablet friendly, because if it's not, you're going to get a lot more bounce rate from people who are visiting your site from a mobile or from a tablet environment. And in this case, you can actually see that. You can see that a few more people are bouncing on mobile and a few more people are bouncing on tablets. So that is a very strong reminder that this site might want to do a few things on their mobile environment. You can also see that for this particular site, people on desktops are viewing more pages than people on mobile. They are also viewing more than people on tablets, although tablets a little bit higher as well. The desktop has the highest session duration, and mobile has the lowest session duration. So essentially what I would do based on this information is really try to focus on, how do I make this site more mobile friendly? How do I make it more appealing to these people? Because as this number continues to grow, since it's growing faster than desktop users, I really want to make sure I'm catering to those people, and I really want to make sure I'm providing a good experience for them. And what you can do there is just make little changes over time, maybe just play with the way you're presenting your content, or add mobile-friendly videos, or just check your layout in general. Just check all of those mobile pages from your own phone and see if there's anything that would make you want to leave the page. Again, we can help provide insights there with our site checkup, so just let us know if you're interested in that. Another great piece of data is trying to figure out where your clients are coming from. And this breaks down into a couple things. It's partially their physical location, like are they coming from the United States? Are they visiting your site from Puerto Rico, from Mexico, Canada, the European Union? Different things like that. So in this case, you can actually break it down and see how many people are coming from each area. You can also break it down by language, so you can see how many people are viewing your site with a default English browser and how many people prefer Spanish. If if you have, a reasonable amount of viewers coming to your site and they prefer Spanish and your site is not in Spanish, that's also going to increase your bounce rate. People are going to leave and just go try to find a site that is written in Spanish. The browser translations are okay, but they're not nearly as good as someone who does have a working understanding of the language and has put time into making it flow correctly in someone's native tongue. So if you do expect to work with people who speak more than one language, I do recommend investing in a translation tool and translating your menu, translating your content pages, and that's really going to help improve your bottom line. So after that little dive, I just want to check in with you one more time and see if your mind is going crazy or going numb. In my case, I love data, so I'm really excited about all these things and how they can be made to improve your sites. However, if it seems like a little too much and you don't necessarily understand all the details, again, just keep in mind we're the doctors. That is what we are here for. That is why we are the pros. If your mind is going numb, it may be because you're more of a creative type than an analytical type. I think we've all heard the examples of being right-brained, left-brained. In our case at Cyberkazoo, Kathy is much more of a creative brain than I am, and I am much more of a data brain. So that's why we work so well together, because we're able to accomplish things together that neither of us would be able to pull off on our own. So we're going to do a quick test to kind of see which category you fall into. So ask yourself, in a social situation, do you usually remember faces or names more easily? And if you were to guess, what do you think that says about you? When socially interacting with people, do you naturally pick up on nonverbal cues into a person's mood? This usually boils down to body language, but it can be other things as well. In my case, I'm very verbal and direct. People usually just need to tell me what they're thinking, or I would have no idea. And lastly, do you enjoy the concept of risk and being spontaneous, or do you prefer being disciplined and consistent? Now, these are just a few questions, and I think we're all a little bit creative and a little bit data-oriented, but this can just kind of help you understand which way you lean. So, to further emphasize this, I'd like to take a minute to break it up and show you what creative minds tend to emphasize versus what logical analytical minds tend to emphasize. Creative brains tend to look for and focus on images and views. Logical minds and analytical minds tend to focus on value comparison. They're way more interested in numbers. Logical analytical minds tend to focus way more on value comparison, such as pricing information. Creative minds are interested in the bedrooms and bathrooms because they want to imagine themselves filling that space. Where's my office going to be? Which one's going to be the bedroom? Where can I hang my art? Where are my kids going to live? Things like that. And logical brains are going to focus more on, again, numbers. Creative brains are very interested in how things flow together, whether they make sense. So things like the banners on your site and whether they have a consistent theme. Logical brains are going to skip all that and say, where's it actually located? Is it close to the mall? Is it close to my work? Is it close to various other things that I need on a regular basis? Creative brains are also very interested in fantasy lifestyle elements. So if you're selling properties that happen to be on a golf course or happen to be on the beachfront, that's a really good thing to emphasize. Whereas logical brains are going to focus more on the big picture. They're going to kind of calculate everything together and see it as an equation that either makes sense or does not. The most important thing to take away from this is that although you may be a creative brain or a logical analytical brain, your clients do not always fall into a single category. So it is important to appeal to both. You want to make sure you do have very good pictures, but also have value comparison. You want to make sure that people can search by price, possibly that they can even search by bedrooms, bathrooms, locations, areas, things like that. You want to make sure that things flow together if possible. Whether or not logical analytical brains see it the same way, they still do appreciate it. It's something that is subconsciously present and it makes things feel a little better. If you do have access to fantasy lifestyle elements like golf, like the marina, like things like that, it is good to emphasize them, to make sure that you talk about them in the descriptions or that you show them off in the pictures. There are lots of ways to make sure that you emphasize all of these points throughout your site. And by appealing to the entire audience rather than just the ones that you can relate to the most easily, this is a good way to ensure that your site overall is going to be a lot more successful. So the last question I want to ask you all today is, do you know where your customers are clicking? In this case, I've taken a screenshot of one of our most successful sites. This is a site in Costa Rica, and he's made a lot of investments over the years. He's invested in a Spanish menu, Spanish pages. He's invested in listings by price, listings by neighborhood. People can search by residential, commercial, or rentals. In this case, his banners are actually all his listings, some of his most luxurious listings, and people can click on that. People can also click on the specific traffic drivers as they can on most of our sites. So how do we actually know what pages are working and what pages aren't? How do we actually know what tools people are drawn to and what tools people ignore? Well, the answer is trial and error and data. So this is how we collect and how we figure out what's working and how we continually use his investments to improve his results over time. If your goal is to get to a point where your site has everything a user could possibly want and you can focus on the market you want and you can learn from your mistakes, then data is a very good investment for you. So I would encourage you to just take a moment to evaluate where you're at. Do you have all the information that you'd like? Do you have all the pages that you'd like? Are you appealing to the entire audience, or do you feel that you're only catering to some of them? In any case, your question should be, where do I go from here? How would you like to move forward? Of course, you can keep guessing your way forward. Randomness is always an option, but in my opinion, data is going to help you make better decisions. And whether or not you use data, some of your competitors will. So if you'd like to remain competitive in your market, if you'd like to do better overall, data is a great investment in increasing your understanding and making your site more competitive on the web. So keep in mind, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. If you'd like a site checkup or if you'd like anything else, any other insights or information, feel free to contact us. We'll be putting this video online on YouTube. We'll also be writing a blog about it if you'd rather read than watch. So there are plenty of ways to get in touch with us, plenty of ways to interact with this information. Anyways, thanks for your time today, everyone. Let us know if you're ready to make an investment in data.